Welcome to the Restless Creatives podcast. Comfortable chats with inspirational creatives. Hosted by three self-confessed restless creatives, Lucy Hunter, Fiona Pickles and Bridget Girling. This week we chat with Paula Sutton of Hill House Vintage. With a background in fashion, magazines and a love of flowers, cakes and vintage styling, Paula is an extraordinarily positive and inspiring woman. Despite having had at times a very difficult year last year, she talks very candidly of her experiences and how she now finds herself with the career and life she once only dreamed of.
Anyway, hello, welcome. Now, we do this every time because we're never really sure where people pop up on the screen. But I can see that you've got Fiona below you, but you might. She's in orange. Can you see that?
You see? Hello.
She's obviously up there. And I can see Lucy's up there, but she's going to be down there for you, isn't she?
Hello. Well, I'm all at the top, so I'm going to actually change my view. Right. Yes. So Fiona, you're down there. Oh. Bridget, you're up there. You're down there.
Ah. Excellent.
And I'm over here.
So if the dog runs up the stairs, it'll look like it's running up the chimney again.
Somebody's got a dog barking. Is that you, Paula? Is that Coco?
No. Coco is outside somewhere.
Oh, okay. That's Fiona says it's her.
Ruby for some reason.
We always
it's
have some dog that just pitches up and makes themselves known.
Normally squadges on the sofa in the background.
Oh. Haven't you all got lovely homes? So I'm being very nosy now.
Well, same.
How gorgeous. How gorgeous.
Anyway, we're so delighted that you're here with us.
Absolutely. Very honoured.
Especially as it's such a beautiful day here in Suffolk and Norfolk. You could be in a garden.
I know. And my husband, I'm looking at my husband through the window in the garden with the dog.
So we've got a whole host of questions for you that we won't even hope to get through. But probably the best thing to do is to start off by asking you to tell us, introduce yourself to us and all the people listening and watching. Tell us about you.
Me? Talk about myself?
Yes.
I never show myself. Well, my name is Paula Sutton, and I am. It's hard to know how you describe yourself, because am I the writer of a blog, or am I just I'm the person responsible for a blog and Instagram account called Hill House Vintage. Mm-hmm. And Hill House Vintage is Hill House is the name of my home that is in Norfolk, and we moved here 11 years ago now. And it inspired, I gave up my career in London, and I was inspired to start a blog called the Hill House Diaries, which was just purely to fill my time while I tried to gather my thoughts and think about what on earth I do now that I've left London.
And you're in the middle of nowhere.
I'm in the middle of nowhere during a recession. I hadn't made a plan. And so I found myself in a situation, it all seemed like a good idea. The build-up is always a good idea. When you're there, you're thinking, oh God, what do I do now?
Yeah.
So writing a blog was something that allowed me to just have something to do, have a purpose while I thought about what happens next.
What did you focus on in the blog?
Well, it was about furnishing my home. So basically, we were one of those typical Londoners who your eyes are bigger than your brain, really. So you're seeing these lovely houses that you can buy that are out of London, but you don't think about living there, what happens afterwards. You're just thinking, oh my goodness, we can swap our London terrace for this, how amazing. So we did that, spent all our money on the house, and had hardly any furniture. And we'd given up the dual income. So I didn't have the excuse to say, I want to buy this and I want to buy that or whatever. So we filled about 2 rooms. And then I had to think creatively how to fill the rest of the house. So the vintage part of Hill House Vintage came purely because we didn't have money. We had a house and we had to fill it. And I've always loved sort of like shabby chic, old chippy furniture and old antiques and old sort of vintage stuff. So it wasn't too hard for me to get into it. but it purely was born out of necessity. I had to fill the house. I had to make it lovely. I wanted to have a lovely house, and so my blog started off just my trips to car boot sales, my trips to auction houses, which sounds very posh, but Norfolk auction houses, they're not. It's not Sotheby's, and it's not places like that. They're proper. You're selling sheep next to old tables, and you're buying chairs for £5 and tables for £10. So it's that sort of auction. So it was really filled with my vintage finds, and that was how it all started, really, and that was how Hill House Vintage came about.
Okay.
And then you had, sorry, Lucy.
Sorry, what was the career you left behind in London?
So in London, I'm a bookings editor for Elle magazine. So
what does that mean, bookings editor?
It's an odd term, isn't it? Yeah, the ticket officer. No, I was. So you have shoots for a fashion magazine. So we had, I think, on average, about 4 fashion shoots every month to produce, to put together.
Yeah.
And I was the producer. I produced all of the fashion shoots and the cover shoots and also the beauty shoots. So all of the shoots, not so much the small pictures which are can be bought from a library or they're organised by the picture department. I put together the sort of trappings of the photographer and the models and booked the models' flights and then got the location, had to source the location. And I spoke directly to whoever the editor or the fashion director was to see what their vision was. And then I tried to put that vision together. So I did the building blocks.
So you're almost like the producer on a
Exactly.
film or something. It's that sort of
Exactly.
role.
Exactly. It was exactly that role. And I absolutely loved it. But the only thing about that role is that I wasn't the creative person. I was just the person who put all the building blocks together.
Okay.
And I didn't realise that until I came here and started doing my own things. I hadn't realised that I craved that side of things. But producing I think I was there for 8 years at Elle. And before that, I was in fashion PR and I was a model agent at one point. It was wonderful. I loved my career. I absolutely loved my career. But I didn't realise that there was sort of a gaping hole of creativity that I wanted to fulfil. And funnily enough, I'd studied art at school. And so there was an artistic side to me, and I'd wanted to be an interior designer at one point. But it was lost. It sort of slipped away. And I think working within the fashion industry, you sort of feel that you're next to creativity anyway. So it's easy to forget that you're not doing it, you're next to it, you're close enough that you sort of lose sight of maybe that's what you wanted to do yourself.
Yeah.
So yes, that was my career in London. And it was lovely. I loved every minute of it. But the only thing when you're working in that industry is it's relentless. It goes on all through the night. You're talking to New York, Australia, wherever. So you're getting called all the way through the evening. There's a lot of socializing. That's just how that industry works. And so when you've got young children, it's a nightmare.
And you've got 3, haven't you?
I've got 3. I've got 3 old children now. But yes, at the time I had 3 young children.
Yeah.
But yes.
So I'm very interested to know about your childhood, and I also am really intrigued by your parents because I mean your dad's met the Queen a couple of times, hasn't he?
He has. Well, do you know both my parents? Sadly I lost my mother last year, but both my parents are such an inspiration. I know perhaps everyone says that, but my parents came over to England in 1960. And they came without a penny.
Because they came from Grenada, didn't they?
From Grenada in the West Indies,
Yes.
That's correct. They came here without a penny to their name. And my father, his first job was as a hospital porter, pushing deceased people from one part of a hospital to another. And he didn't have formal qualifications, so he didn't have a degree to sort of project himself straight to a certain level. He then became a bus driver, and then they worked their way up through the ranks. My mother was a psychiatric nurse, and my father ended up over obviously several decades getting into politics, and he ended up being an ambassador. So he was an ambassador for Grenada to England, to the Court of St. James. So they had a dual sort of living experience of 1 foot in England and 1 foot back in Grenada. And so they ended up, he finished his career as an ambassador. So that's why he met the Queen.
I see.
It's amazing, isn't it? So what made them come to England in the first place? What prompted that move? Because that's a big move.
It's a huge move. Well, one, the blanket invitation to the Commonwealth at the time, as you know, there was a deficit of people who could work on things like public transport and in all those sorts of industries. So people were asked to come over. My mother was asked to come over and train as a nurse. And also, I think at that point, particularly at that point, the Commonwealth was of such great importance to these smaller islands and these small countries. It still is, of course. But they saw England as the motherland. You know, England was, even though, you know, obviously as West Indians, there's a history of slavery and Africa. But England was, you know, the Queen is their Queen. So it was this whole thought that they deserved and belonged here, and they needed to come here at some point. And that's what they all did. They came over by boat, feeling that they were coming to their second home often.
And how did they feel when they got here?
Cold. Very cold. I mean, there are lots of stories. I'm very lucky in the sense that my parents are incredibly positive people.
That's where you get it from.
They're incredibly positive people. So for every story that is slightly unpleasant, and there are stories from their past, because there was a lot of racism. People were quite shocked to see a whole load of West Indian people suddenly descend on London and all over the country. But for every story that they have that's not so pleasant, my father always has, both my parents always had a learning experience from it, something that made them stronger, something that made them more resilient. So even though there are negatives there, he always speaks of that period of time as wonderful. It was character building, and you know, it gave him ambition, and it encouraged him to make the leap from what he was doing to something more and better for his family. So it's all wrapped up in a cloak of wonderful positivity and learning, which is always great. But I think, you know, they had hard times. They came in the era of no blacks, no dogs, no Irish were signs that were on doors. So and that's a shock. Obviously, you're coming from a place where you can go anywhere to a place where you know, that no one was banned from anywhere, but people were discouraged.
You weren't welcome.
Yes, you weren't necessarily welcome. So they had all of that to contend with, but they love England. They always loved England, and it didn't ever. My father had, I think, 4 other brothers who came over to England, who all ended up going to live in America. But my father loved it here, and never left. Never left.
So were they delighted to be able to go back to Grenada to live that sort of?
They were
in both worlds.
Yes, they were. The only problem they had was that they had all their children in England. So all of their children were born in England, and it's very difficult because they brought us up as British children and British adults. So I do have one brother who went over and lives there with his family, thank goodness, because when they went back, they isolated themselves from they had their larger family, but and of course it was back home, but all of their children and grandchildren were all in England, which was that's the problem when you move abroad and you make your life and make such a strong and positive and wonderful life abroad. It's very hard when you then want to return or want to retire somewhere, because where do you retire? Do you retire with your family, or do you go back to the place you were born? So yes, and all those questions have arisen over the last few years, of course. But it's they're over here all the time. Well, my father now hasn't been for the last year, but in the past they over here 4 times a year, even though they're supposed to be in the Caribbean. They come over here to do some shopping. Marks and Spencers, they're obsessed with Marks and Spencers. You know, they've still got to get their underwear in England.
I love that. Yeah, your M&S pants.
Exactly. You can't get pants anywhere else.
So very sadly, you did lose your mum at the beginning of the whole lockdown COVID thing, where I think you just got back, didn't you, and came straight
Just
into
got
lockdown.
back. They came over. My parents came over to England in 2019, it must have been, to celebrate my father's 80th birthday. So we organised a huge surprise party for him in London. And my mother fell ill 2 days before the surprise party and ended up in hospital for the party. She'd been planning this party for a year. And for about 3 months, no one knew what was wrong with her. We did wonder if it was COVID. It wasn't such, no one knew too much about it at the time, but they went through that. They wondered if that's what it was, but her blood count was going lower and lower. And in December, while she was still here, we found out she had leukemia. And then we were told that she had 4 months to live. It was one of those sort of, you only see it in film. Well, I'd only ever seen it in films, you know, given 4 months to live. You know, you're always expecting it to be at least a year or 2 years or something. So that was a huge shocker. And she was getting weaker and weaker by the day, really. And we managed to, right at the last moment, we managed to get her flown back to Grenada in January. And she had predicted another 2 months. And she died on the 14th of February, on Valentine's Day, in my father's arms. So it was, of all the ways to go, it was a beautiful way to go, if that can be said. And I went over. I was meant to go over to stay with her to see her pass, but I didn't get there in time. So when we went over for the funeral, we all gathered, and it was, I think I was there for about 3 weeks, and when I came back, I had 2 days and we were in lockdown.
Gosh.
So
that must have been so difficult.
It was so, everything happened so fast.
Yes.
Even from my mother dying to coming back, and even when I went for the funeral, we knew about COVID, but it was other places. I think Italy was in lockdown.
Yes, I remember that was,
Europe,
it was scary to see, wasn't it?
Absolutely. But for some bizarre reason, we still didn't connect it with happening here.
Yeah, I think that's probably true of everybody.
Absolute denial. And it was on my way back. I remember being at the airport, and a few people had masks, and there's a bigger medical school in Grenada, and a lot of the students were being were scrabbling to go back home before lockdown occurred, and it was suddenly this end of the world scenario that just came upon us, and we were all thinking, like, what's going on? What's happening? I remember arriving back at Heathrow, and it was empty. I had never seen an airport empty. It was incredible. And then, as I say, we had 2 days to go or something, and we were in full lockdown. I couldn't believe it. And it's interesting because you say it was hard. It was very selfishly the most wonderful thing that could have happened to me being in mourning, because having my family at home and near me was the most healing, wonderful thing. When you lose somebody, you suddenly become scared of who else you might lose. I hadn't had to face that before. So I was terrified. You know, you're trying to be logical, but you can't help thinking, my goodness, if that can happen, anything can happen. So having the children at home and my husband at home day and night, I actually secretly enjoyed for quite a while. I'm glad to see the back of them now, but at the time.
Yes, and I guess you were occupied because, of course, they should have been at school, your husband should have been at work, and you would have been doing your thing at home.
Exactly, yes.
And
that would have been very lonely, I think. I think being on my own and being thrust straight back into normal life would have been very odd. So in a way, it was helpful. Awful. I mean, the whole thing is devastating. But for me, having the family, having an excuse to have the family at home was actually quite a lovely healing experience for me. It got me through quite a few dark sort of moments of that time. So yes, it's funny how it played out.
But then this goes back to you with putting that positive spin on things that clearly you've received from your parents, because other people may not have seen it in quite that way.
Oh, I know, absolutely, of course, and certainly, especially the last few months, this third lockdown, for young people, my teenagers. My girls are 17 years old; they're 18 this year, and my son should be at university. He's 19, and this is too much for them now. But I'm noticing now. I mean, my girls went back actually yesterday.
Yesterday, yes.
And my son's still at home, but I had begun to notice a dip in their positivity and their, you know, they were beginning to have that staying in their pajamas, being on the sofa, staring at television, playing video games, and they're outdoor kids. They do things and they laugh, and the house is always noisy. And when the house starts going quiet, but they're all here, you know something's wrong.
Yeah.
And I don't think they even realised, but there was a slow decline, and I think it probably happened for a lot of people of that age. They should be out enjoying life and embracing.
It's really funny you've said that, because my son's 19 and he left home 2 days before lockdown, the first lockdown, to start his new apprenticeship in
Yes, you
Birmingham.
found that really hard, didn't you?
I found that incredibly hard. Yeah.
I bet.
Because he's our only child, so he just sort of left, and that was it. And he goes from his bedroom to not seeing him at all, but he's got his own life, and he's always been very positive, and he's been very busy, and it's but I've noticed in the last, this weekend's just gone, but in the last few weeks that he needs to see us more. He needs a bit of normality back.
Absolutely.
Whatever that normality is, he needs to see other friends. He needs,
absolutely.
And I think it's so hard, but I think it's really,
I think that age group, it's incredibly hard, and you can see the low energy. I think that we're like batteries. We need to bounce off people, and we need to be inspired by people and get energy from people. And I think particularly at their age, and they're just not getting that, and you can see them flagging.
You really can. It's really sad, isn't it?
Terribly sad.
But hopefully we're getting there.
The end is in sight.
Oh my goodness, yes. Hopefully.
You can go and sit on a park bench with him now, Luce.
Yeah, love
yes,
that.
that's allowed now, isn't it?
Yeah, great.
We just now need the weather to catch up, don't we? Mind you, it is lovely today.
It is lovely today.
It's not here.
Have you been for your cocoa walk today?
We have been for the cocoa walk, yes. Well, my husband and I went for the cocoa walk this morning. We do 3 walks now. So we do 2 cocoa walks, and then I've started doing a speed walk.
I like the way the shoulders go with that.
Yeah.
You have to clutch the butt cheeks, and sort of like there's a special walk that apparently sort of like really sort of like kills the burns off the calories. Wow. Because oh my goodness, talk about lockdown padding. I have
we're all suffering from that.
I think it's the washing machine that made everything shrink. That's all it is.
It's hit me full. It's probably the combination of Christmas as well, actually. But it's hit me full force this time. This third lockdown. It's and of course now we're coming into spring. You can't hide it. Winter is great.
I know. Take a big
jumpers.
Exactly. So yes, I have 3 lots of good exercise a day at the moment. So.
Because I think that's one of the things that people have loved on your Instagram account, isn't it? Your daily walks.
My walks, exactly. Yes, it's interesting actually, because I do them, and I love doing them to music because it's the sort of thing I love to watch. But you do worry sometimes, because I get lots of feedback. People do enjoy them, it seems. But you do think I'm literally just showing the same walk over and over and over again. So I think I've had a little bit of a break from it for a while, but I will go back to it because I think it's like meditation.
Yes.
Yeah.
If I see somebody else's walk or someone else's garden, padding through somebody else's garden to lovely music, I think is one of the most joyful things to see on Instagram.
Well, I remember you saying, because we ran a little Instagram course once, didn't we, with our lovely friend Julie.
Lovely.
And I remember you saying it's one of those things where you've had people commenting and saying it's one of those things they look for in the morning when they open up their phone, and it was just wonderful for them to see you out in nature, just enjoying it and hearing the music. And now, of course, that's not going to appeal to everybody, but people don't have to watch if they don't want to. No, and I remember you saying that as a point, is you're not appealing to everybody, you're putting out there what you want.
That's exactly it. And I think that's when you start to enjoy Instagram, when you realise that, and you get it, because it's very easy to fall into that trap of thinking, well, what do people want to see? But they've come to you because of you. And so whatever it was that drew them to you in the first place is what they want to see. So just carry on being yourself. And I show boring walks. It's what I do. But I show a combination of all the things I love. I'll do fashion as well, because that is a big part of my life and my history. So, but yes, once you commit to the things that you love and the things that you enjoy, I think it shows. I think it shows through,
definitely.
And it draws people to you. So yes, show the dog walks and show the high heels if that's what you want to do. Not that I like a high heel anymore, but you know, show that fun side of you. That's what you're into.
Yeah,
because your account is, I mean, it's changed a little bit recently, hasn't it? Or we'll maybe go back to that, your big change that happened last year. But I mean, you were vintage, your wall paintings that was ever increasing, and your flowers and your garden, and then the bulldog antiques showing us round there, and your little treasures you were finding, and that kind of thing, which was just so real and authentic. I think that's what people loved about it. And at the point where your big change happened, you were already at 120,000 followers, weren't you?
Yes, I was. And I was at 120,000 followers, just living the life. I didn't think it was that interesting. I really didn't think it was that interesting. But it was just my normal life. I was at Bulldog Barnes every Thursday, and I will go back to Bulldog Barnes, and I help out, and I help sell a few bits, and I buy more than I sell. But you know, that was part of the fun. And then I showed people what I did with all of those things at home. And every so often I wore a pretty frock while doing it. The pretty frock has kind of taken over a bit now.
When did you start to feel brave enough to put yourself in front of the camera?
Well, do you know, it's funny because I used to do it once a year on my birthday. I'd go, "Hi, this is me. This is me. I'm Paula. Bye.
See you next year.
See you next year. Here's Coco." And then all you'd see was the dog. So it used to be an annual thing. There was a lady who, before I even did that, there was a lady in Australia who challenged me. I think it was back in the days when you sort of played games online. So there were things like show your favorite black and white photo, or show your first photo. And you sort of built up these communities and did these sort of like challenges. And the challenge was show yourself, show your face. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, I can't show my face. And I think the first photo that you actually ever see me on there, I'm hanging out the washing. Oh my goodness. And I'm hiding. I'm wearing a hat on purpose so no one can see me. Oh. And I'm hanging out the washing, and you can just see my face. And I can't believe how far I'm jazz hands now. all tap dancing, all singing. But at the time, I was so shy. I didn't want to. I didn't want anyone to see me. But I was also coming out of a period of hiding myself anyway in real life, because I had a little bit of a crisis of identity when I got here. So I had a year of being busy sorting out the house, and then about 3 years of thinking, what now? Who am I? What do I do? You know, what's my role beyond being a wife and mother? And I went through a real sort of okay, I live in the countryside now. I've got to wear countryside clothes. And I would wear my husband's old jumpers and sort of our old wax jackets and a tweed hat, and just sort of shove it down and just hide. And I was becoming more and more miserable and thinking, I didn't ever feel that we'd made the wrong decision. I love it here. I always have. That's never changed. But I did wonder whether I'd really sort of tied myself up in knots and given myself no purpose, and that worried me. That worried me a lot, and that was reflected in the fact that I hid myself, and you know, my walks were really early in the morning or really late at night so that I couldn't see anyone.
When you moved to Norfolk, did you know anybody, or
no,
so that didn't help either? It's not like you had friends here or family.
No, not at all. We married up here. My in-laws used to live literally about a quarter of a mile down the road. But by the time we moved up, they had moved to East Sussex. They've since come back up here to live near us. But at the time when we moved up, we knew the area because we used to come up here for weekends, and we were married up here. But no, we didn't know anyone when we moved up. But yes, so I went through that sort of very quiet, still hiding period before I started to rediscover myself and got into selling vintage things. got into showing myself, showing my home more, and writing about my discoveries and writing about my life. And that's when I started to open up more. And that's when I started beginning to show my face a little bit more and start enjoying that, you know. It's and that was all to do with the interaction. It's so much about what you get back. So you show your face, and you have lots of people going, "Yay! Wonderful! It's great to see you." And of course, that encourages you to show your face more.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think you quite often you talk to women on Instagram. I mean, being florists, it is the majority are women, and that certainly the women who then say, "Oh no, I don't want to show myself." And it is very interesting how we are all very frightened of just putting ourselves out there. And as you say, you do get used to it, but it is such a huge leap to do it. And
it really is.
You feel so vulnerable doing it. You do.
I think the fear of criticism.
Yes.
And I think it obviously stems from our youth or something, because of course you don't really tend to be online and someone says the things that you think they're going to say. You know, no one's really... You might all be sitting there thinking, God, hasn't she got buck teeth? But you're not going to say it to me. I realise that now.
Well, somebody did say that to me on Instagram. They said I could get my teeth fixed. Yeah.
Wow.
So rude.
I mean, but to be honest, I have had a few of those. But I think they're often very young, and I think people are trying to cause a stir. Or...
I thought it was quite funny, because I thought, these teeth have been fixed. This is as good as it gets.
this is me on a good day. Exactly. But yes, I think we have that fear that there will be. I mean, I've had people say that my house is full of tat. You know, I remember one person saying, "Your house is full of old tat. You've seen it all before." And I just said, "It is full of tat. You're right."
Yes, I love it.
And I love it. You know, that table was £50. Yeah, it's great. It's great tat, and I love it. You know, it's fine. I don't mind that. And I think
it says it in the name, vintage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
There's a clue.
It's not Hill House Antiques. But so yes, but I suppose you have to be quite strong to be able to laugh those things off. But I always feel it's something that, my goodness, every mother tells their child. When somebody is coming from a place where they feel the need to criticize you, that they're not happy. It's not a happy thing, is it, to try and make somebody else's day or life a misery? And I think I realize that so much now that I can't say nothing affects me, but very little affects me now, because I cannot imagine sitting down at a keyboard and telling somebody that they look ugly, or telling someone that their house is awful, or criticizing somebody for their choice of what they're doing. I can't imagine how you must feel about your life to feel the need to do it. So I only have sympathy for people who do that, to be honest.
One of our friends puts a couple of reels up of her dog, Caroline, and somebody direct messaged her and said, "Nobody wants to see your stupid dog anyway." And it's like, well, actually, yes, we do. We really want to see our dog. So go away.
And while they're watching, I've watched your reel 12 times, and I still don't want to see that dog. Well, why are you watching? But yes, I think it's people, especially over the last year. I think, people, there's been a lot of reason and cause to be unhappy. So I think there's probably been a sort of a spike in people saying unpleasant things, maybe. But
so how did you feel about what happened in June? Because as I understand it, you were oblivious to this until you started to see your follow count escalating.
It was ridiculous. It was absolutely ridiculous. It was actually in April. It was nearly a year.
Oh, was it?
It's nearly a year. So the thing that happened in lockdown, and the reason everything started changing, is because I couldn't vintage hunt, couldn't go out, couldn't visit anywhere, and I realised that I was showing the same parts of my house over and over and over again, and I was getting bored. I was getting deathly bored. So and I've always done the whole tablescapes outside and cakes outside, wobbly cakes walking to the table, and as I was getting more confident about showing myself, I started showing myself in different dresses, because I was just thinking of something else to have on there. So it was one weekend I had me having a picnic, that was it. I was in a dress having a picnic, and because of I see it as a creative outlet. I love creating lovely pictures and images, and it's the same as when I was at Elle magazine, except I wasn't in control of those pictures then. That's all it is for me. So I'm very aware that, you know, people don't drink champagne like that, and people don't hold apples like this.
You might not, but
I love photography from the, you know, fashion photography from the 50s and 60s, where it's all very stylized. And I just love all of that. I love Hollywood musicals. I'm obsessed with Hollywood musicals, you know, the old-fashioned Hollywood musicals. I'm obsessed with all of those old films. And so much of my, of the photographs that I take, and especially when I'm in them, it's in my mind, I have an image of an old Hollywood musical, or, you know, and that's why I flounce the skirts, and that's why I do all of that. It's always flowers, and they're just happy pictures for me. They're me exploring my creativity and trying to make a pretty picture that is joyful.
And you do this all on your phone as well, isn't it? This is all.
Yes, it's all. Yes, I have no idea how to use a proper camera. And usually what I do is, especially when I'm in them, I used to use a tripod, but now what I do is I get one of the children or my husband to stand where I want to stand, and then I run and direct them where they should be for the right light, and then I run back and say, right, you stand exactly there, and then I'm back in that position. So we have great fun.
So now you are still producer, but you're director and the actor
and model.
Absolutely, and the model. Yeah, that's the weirdest one. Yes, and the model. So it's sort of, yes. So that day I had done a picnic one, and my house is like it's like a sort of doll's house. It's sort of square. It's how a child would draw a house.
Yeah.
And it's very symmetrical. It sits in its garden, very symmetrical. And
can't help it.
It can't help it. That's just what it does. That's its thing. And so I love taking these images where I'm sat in the middle of the lawn.
Yeah.
In the middle. And it's a visual thing that appeals to me. So I never think in terms of, here's me in front of my house. And look at me. To me, it's sort of like, oh, that's really lovely. It's symmetrical, you know. Oh, there's a bit of blue sky. That's going to look really pretty.
Yeah.
So I sat pretending to have this picnic, and I thought that's a nice photograph. So I posted that, and I think it was eat, sleep, something, repeat.
Yeah.
My mind wasn't working for captions that day, but so I posted that, and then I think that was a Saturday, and on the Sunday, I remember my husband went out. He was going to do the grocery shop. We were in mid-lockdown, and suddenly I thought, oh, I don't know, there's 100 more followers there. That's how exciting. and sometimes when someone shares you suddenly have a little bit of a spike. Yeah. So I thought, oh my goodness, someone shared me. How exciting. How lovely.
Who is it?
And the next, who is it? And the next thing I looked, I thought, there's 1,000 more followers. That's, I mean, my good. I did actually at one point think, is it Oprah Winfrey who shared me? I know it's
the Queen.
Is it the Queen? Is it the Queen who shared me? It must be somebody with a lot of clout. And then it started being 10,000 more.
Gosh.
And wow. 10,000 more than that. And I have to admit, at that point, I got scared. It went past being, oh, this is fun and exciting, to this doesn't feel nice.
Something going on.
This doesn't feel right. It feels exposing.
Did you feel like somebody had maybe taken your account and was doing something with it?
Do you know, funny enough, I didn't think that, but I did think, I suddenly thought, do you know, it just felt scary because I was suddenly aware of eyes on me. Now, the weird thing with social media is people are looking because that's the whole point of it, but you're in control. Yeah. And when you grow slowly, it doesn't matter if your numbers are big. I've reached over 100,000 followers, but the growth had been slow and steady.
Yeah.
And so I almost felt as if I knew all of those 100,000 people. Of course you don't, but you know why they're coming to you. They're coming to you because of your vintage pictures, or they're coming to you for this reason. I didn't know why these people were coming. I didn't understand. And I kept thinking, you know, have I done saucy pictures in my youth or something?
Someone found them and I can't remember.
You're just thinking, what on earth, could possibly be giving people that sort of element of interest. Anyway, so I had no idea. And for a long time, I even Googled my name. I couldn't find anything. I thought it has to be something. It got to a stage where I think I had, in one afternoon, gained 100,000 more people. By the next day, yes, 100,000 more people. When somebody messaged, you're probably wondering what's happened, because nobody was telling me. Nobody had put on, actually, I don't know at that stage, I don't think many people had put on that picture a reason why this was happening. Somebody said, you're probably wondering what's happening. You're the subject of a Twitter war. And I hardly use Twitter. I have a Twitter account because I think 8 years ago everyone started, and then if you're into it, you're into it, and if you're not, you're not. But yes, the subject. I didn't know what the hell is a Twitter war. I had no idea. And then I started hearing the word race and race war, and then it was like, oh my goodness, what on earth is going on? What's being said? What's happening? And then I realised that a young journalist had said that today is the day that I delete Instagram for good, and this is the picture that made me do it. And of course, there's me sitting in front of my house, pretending to eat an apple. And that was the picture that made her delete Instagram, she said. And underneath, there were lots of comments initially from people going, oh my God, these influencers, I can't bear them, and calling me names and all sorts of things. And then there's a delay, and then underneath that, there starts to be support and people saying, why have you picked on this woman? Why have you picked on a 50-year-old woman who's minding her own business and not doing anything? And then underneath that is, why have you picked on a black woman? Now, the interesting thing with the picture is that I have a big wide hat on and my head is bent down. And you actually, I don't think you can, I mean, you have to look to see my skin color. So I felt at the time that it wasn't because of that. I kind of guessed, and I subsequently had a chat with the journalist, that it was seen as an insensitive post because there I was enjoying a large garden, and there are a lot of people in lockdown who didn't have that privilege and didn't have the benefit of garden, and it just hadn't occurred to me. I mean, in my naivety, it hadn't occurred to me because this is what I've always done. I've always shown myself in my garden, and no one cares. You know,
you're just carrying on as
I was just carrying on, and I didn't think that, oh my goodness, people are stuck in flats and people are stuck in houses without gardens. I was just continuing to show my pretty pictures, and on top of that, for me, having just lost my mother, I was throwing my heart and soul into creating pictures and doing things and styling. I had nothing else to do. I couldn't go anywhere. So I was sort of baking cakes. I mean, the children were just eating cake after cake. I was baking and cooking and styling and this, and and I'm trying to take my mind off. The sadness,
busy,
keeping myself busy. And I hadn't stopped to thought that maybe some people wouldn't appreciate seeing me go, how awful, eat, sleep, repeat in my garden, because that's not how I intended it to come across. So anyway, there was an onslaught of support for me. I think a lot to do with the fact that there's a lot of criticism about influencers, but not many influencers are middle-aged. So there were lots of, and I personally don't like the word influencer anyway. I think it's a nonsense word, but it's the category that I was put into the situation. But I think there are lots of people who do flaunt stuff, which is totally their right. I do believe in the right for anyone to do what they want on their page. But there are people who flaunt things and talk about what they have and blah blah blah. And I think a lot of people came to my support because they said, all she does is show flowers and cakes, and her gut. She's just minding her own business, living her own life. Where is the problem? And
you don't have to look at this if you don't want to.
You don't have to look at it if you don't want to.
And you don't have to tell the world that you've chosen not to look at it if you don't want to.
Exactly. But it grew and grew and grew. And I think over the space of the last 6 months, I've grown 400,000 extra eyes on me, or 300,000 extra eyes on me. And I'm used to it now, but at the time, I must admit, it was not the way I wanted to grow. You want to grow, want to sort of grow your account, but that was a very uncomfortable way to grow. And I spoke to the journalist in question, and she apologized, and she said that she didn't, it was not a personal attack. And I do believe that. It wasn't a personal attack. It was, she was using the image as an example of how frustrated she was. She said she was just very angry and frustrated and bored. She lived alone. She lived in a flat. She wasn't happy. And I do get that. I do understand that.
How did that conversation come about? How did she contact you?
She contacted me. No, she contacted me.
But you know, again, tremendous that you decided to go ahead with that conversation. A lot of people would have thought, I'm not talking to you.
Well, do you know, it's interesting because I didn't feel that it came from a position of racism. Unfortunately, she picked on the wrong person. She picked on the wrong person. She shouldn't have picked on anyone, is the truth.
That's the thing.
You know, the truth is that no one deserves that. No one deserves that sort of, that criticism that other people can join in and it becomes a bun fight, because that's what she was inciting. And regardless of race or age or whatever, she was inciting people to hate on somebody because she didn't like an image, because she didn't hide my name, my username. So it wasn't a case of this is a photograph from a library or something that I'm just using as an example. She knew that people could see my name, but if it had gone the other way and I'd had a lot of hate, I don't know, would she have liked, I mean, I doubt she would have preferred that, but, you know, it could have gone that way too. I was lucky.
That's endangering people's lives,
It could have gone very much the other way. It so happened that I got support, but gosh, you choose the wrong timing and you might not get support. So yes, so she did apologize, and I did accept her apology, but I did say to her, you know, it's very naive of you to you shouldn't pick on anyone. You shouldn't be doing this to anyone. You don't know
what's going on behind those squares.
You don't know what's going on. And I did say to her, I thought, I'm not going to I don't want her to feel too bad, because my goodness, mental health under these conditions where people are locked inside their homes is awful, and I don't want her, you know, I don't want to create a victim out of her. But at the same time, I did say to her, you know, I lost my mother 2 weeks ago. Or 3 weeks ago. You don't know what is going on in my life. It's not all eating cake and pretending it, like, you know, this is a coping mechanism. You have no idea why I create these pictures or what I'm doing. And I think it was a learning exercise for her too. Yeah. But equally, it was a learning thing for me as well. It's made me look at my pictures differently.
Do you feel some kind of responsibility now for all of those people who supported you, that groundswell?
Do you know, it's interesting because it was it made me, it pushed a lot of things into the foreground that I hadn't thought of before. I hadn't seen myself as primarily a Black creator. I was just Paula doing my thing online. You know, I literally hadn't, there was no big picture. There was no plan or motive or underlying cause. I was just me making pretty pictures. And I think this is symptomatic of when you start something small and it grows and grows and grows and grows and grows. You don't notice that it's growing really. You're just living life in the same way. And I hadn't had thoughts about responsibility or what I represented or who, you know, people thinking beyond seeing a nice picture. And yes, I do have more responsibility. That situation and everything that happened last year actually has put a different level of responsibility, I think, onto what I do and who I am. But also the whole episode has pushed this into more of a career for me. It was always going that way, and it was going that way anyway.
I remember us talking about it, and you were developing your YouTube channel, and
yes,
and this has catapulted you. In fact, you've what's that huge high jump that people do?
The tall one.
The really tall one. I mean, you've gone way over what your ambition was into something else entirely, haven't you?
Absolutely. It's bonkers actually how what it is now. I don't even know what it is now.
Pole vault.
It's a pole vault. Yes, that's the one. Yeah, it's I couldn't have imagined what it is now. No, I couldn't, and I don't think I could have designed this life or career or the way it's turned. And yes, for a few months I didn't know if I wanted.
How did it affect your children, or did it affect your children?
Oh, they thought it was great. I mean, they are they're from the era of social media. As far as they're concerned, oh, that's really cool. It's fine. You know, it's great. They thought
my mum's got 500,000 followers.
Yeah, exactly. but it is like that. They took it in their stride completely. They thought, you know, they were worried with the surge, but only because they were worried about how I was handling it. But they were like, how many now? How many now? Because that's what they do at their age. You know, that's they're from that generation. So for them, it's fine. That whole idea of exposure isn't weird for them. I think in the same way anyway. But
so what have you been doing recently that has really excited you, that was a dream and is now reality?
Now it's interesting because there are a couple of things that when is this going out?
Well, it depends.
Wow.
Do you have a deadline that you shouldn't have something out there by, or what?
I've got a few secrets.
Ooh,
I've got a few secrets.
We can put it out later.
but my secrets are exactly they're date dependent. I haven't got exact dates, but there's some dreams coming true.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Sorry, I sort of, but there's some lovely things happening which probably will be announced in April, May time.
Okay.
So it's like,
when have we got Paula on our list?
We'll just move it to after dates, just so we can hear them.
I mean, the thing is, it's all things I always wanted to do. It's all nothing odd has happened, but my timeline was I'd have hit those sort of marks, if ever, when I was about 90. They've all just happened a bit faster than I.
You can enjoy them sooner. Oh,
but it's all amazing stuff, and also the whole the interest in the fashion side is something I just didn't ever anticipate or expect at all. So it's all it's the whole thing is reinventing itself every month. It's reinventing itself, but I hope that it all comes back. I mean, I don't leave my home, so everything I do is based around Hill House. So there is a theme, there is a look, there is a style to it all, and you know, I don't intend to leave my home much, to be honest. I'm a homebody, so it's sort of like it's been a time where I don't think I have changed, but I won't change much more because nothing much else is going to happen. I intend to stay home as much as possible.
How do you cope with the busyness that it's created? Because you must be bombarded constantly with requests and
it's
needing to stage things for people. And
do you know, it's interesting because I think it's like there's a sort of tiered system where, very similar to my numbers going up so quickly, your numbers go up and you panic and you feel, I don't want this. This isn't what I intended. And then you start breathing again and you get used to it, and then it's okay. And I'm finding this is happening every stage of the way. Before Christmas, I was overwhelmed. I had a lot of work. I got an agent. An agent approached me and they wanted to represent me, which I thought, oh my goodness, okay, that's, wow. I used to be an agent. So it's like, oh my goodness, the shoe's on the other foot. And with an agent came a lot of work, or a lot more work. And at one point, just before Christmas, I was overwhelmed. I just felt this is too much. This isn't actually what I wanted. This is every single day there's a deadline, and I'm not coping. I'm not keeping up with this. And what was exciting is now just too much, a chore. And I remember it's interesting. I always used to say to my children, I remember my first day at Elle magazine. Actually, I had my first meetings, or the first week at Elle magazine, I had my first meetings, and it's when I had all the different editors tell me about the stories they wanted to do for the season. And the first couple of meetings were wonderful. And I thought, this is such an exciting job. I'm so glad. I'm so lucky to have it. By the end of the week, I came home to my husband and I said, I can't do this job. It's too much. It's too big. I didn't realize how much work I'd have to do. I can't remember everything. I can't fulfill all these different things that I have to do. And I remember crying, thinking, this is going to be so humiliating. I'm going to have to say, I can't do it. And I'm going to have to walk away within that first month trial that you tend to have in jobs. And then week 2, you're still panicking, but it's slightly less. Week 3, you're sort of busy, but panicking in the back of your mind. By week 4, you're just doing your job. And you sort of climb that mountain, you reach the plateau, and you get over onto the other side, and you don't even realize you've done it. You don't realize you've got to the other side. But one day you realize that you're just doing the job and you're not panicking.
I guess it's an element in the early days of that sort of imposter syndrome, isn't it? They're going to find me out. They're going to know I can't do it.
Oh my goodness. I had imposter syndrome from April to probably last Friday. Honestly, I have every time.
Oh, good, because I definitely have it all the time.
No, I do.
Still got it now.
Absolutely. Every time I do an ad in particular, I think, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Who said I should do this? Why? Who told me to do this? Oh my God, what a fool you are, Paula. Why are you doing this? But yes, oh gosh, the imposter syndrome is huge. It's not as much as it was last year, but I'm now back in coping mode again until the next thing happens. But, Lord forbid. But yes, you sort of like you go up a mountain. It gets calm for a while, and then I'm used to expecting the unexpected now. This last year and a half has been wild. Just such a journey of emotions and unexpected happenings, and from my mother to this to all sorts. So it's
all sorts. You can't tell us.
I know, and I hate it when people do that.
We might have to get you back for an extra 5 minutes.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, totally. As soon as I can get dates and things, it's probably obvious what.
No, it's not. It really isn't. No.
Tell us quietly.
I might have an inkling. Well, before you spill the beans, and you shouldn't, I've got 5 questions that we ask everybody. Well, they're not the same questions, but they're sort of quick fire, just to see. You can embellish, or you can just give the answer. It's entirely up to you.
Oh, I talk a lot, so it's going to be embellished.
We like embellish. Right, I get my questions up. So I'm wondering whether this one, we sometimes start with a hard one. I thought I'd started with a hard one the other day with one of our guests, and it turned out to be not hard at all. Dog walks or cake?
Oh gosh, this is so hard. A dog walk while eating a cake?
That's kind of cheating, excellent. But I know where you're coming from.
I think that's allowed.
Good answer. Okay, here's one that's slightly different. What's the first thing you want to do when this is all over? As in this whole lockdown.
This whole lockdown. I really want, I enjoy, this is lovely. I want to have something like this with real, see you in person, not real people. Yeah. You're all real people. I want to be across the table from you. And it must involve food. Yes. So a lovely lunch. I want to socialise. And I am a sociable recluse. I love being at home, and I love my own company, and I love pottering around in my own little world with my dog. But I am thirsty for people and conversation and laughing with people, and yes, I'm desperate for that. So
more than happy to call round for cakes.
We've seen the cakes.
I want a lovely social occasion.
Oh,
and yeah, that would be lovely.
Oh, I love that answer. Magazine or book?
Book. Weirdly, because I've got a house full of magazines. But I tend to, my eye has been retrained, I think, away from reading magazines. I just I flick through magazines, and I think it's because of Instagram. You're used to that sort of fast fix maybe, or that quick buzz. So I tend not to read them, which is a shame, because I used to be sort of obsessed with reading magazines. Whereas books slow me down. They force me to read. So I'd say book.
I'm quite surprised by that. I thought you might still say magazine, given that was your background, but I can see where you're coming from.
Yes. It's I've definitely, although I still buy magazines, but I do have I'm ashamed to say I have parts of magazines that I haven't read properly.
Oh, I have ones that aren't even open that get delivered.
In there.
I know, it's terrible, isn't it? But I still want them. I would still not not buy them or not have them delivered. But they just take up a lot of room.
Right, next question. What's the most dangerous thing you've ever done?
Oh, goodness me.
Ate a picnic in front of the house, by the way.
Absolutely. My goodness, putting my name out on social media. Oh my goodness. I'm a speed freak, so I love my husband races, or used to. We haven't done it for a while. I wondered
if it might be along these lines.
He races vintage and old classic cars, so I've been in races with him. So perhaps something like that. I love a roller coaster, so I've been on some big roller coasters. I'm the first one in terms of the family. I'm the first one on the top of a roller coaster, the biggest and the longest and the fastest, most dangerous.
Biggest scream and biggest smile.
Love it, absolutely, yeah, totally. That's it. I don't do things like jump out of planes and things. Or parachute jump. I couldn't do that. I don't think. I'm not scared of heights, but there's something about it's unnecessary, isn't it?
Yes, it seems like a very silly thing to do.
It is a very silly thing to do, but I have done it.
Hey, did you enjoy it? Now, was it? I mean, I bet it was wonderful.
Well, I am scared of heights, so even more ironic.
Oh my goodness!
But it kind of felt, I am quite contrary. It's almost different to being high, if you know what I mean. It's like a different thing. But so I have said this before, and apologies to people who've heard this before, but it was one of these jumps that it wasn't on the back of somebody else. We had to climb out onto the wing of a Cessna, hold onto the wing of a Cessna, and then let go. No. That initial step to go outside was probably the hardest thing I've ever done. It's just not a natural thing to do. Once you're there and you're falling, it's amazing.
Well, if you didn't do it on the back of somebody, how do you know when to pull?
We had training. We had training on how to land and you roll and whatever it was. It's quite a long time ago.
You haven't convinced me. I'm sorry.
It
was but I mean the experience was actually worth the scary bit at the beginning.
I bet it was wonderful. I'm still not going to ever do one.
No,
but I bet it was wonderful.
Not willingly.
No, not willingly. No, not willingly. Gosh, no. Well done. My goodness.
So, last question: can you dance?
Oh yes. Well, whether I can, do I dance? Yes. Can I dance? I don't know. That's I don't know, subject to opinion, I suppose. But I love to dance. I love to dance.
Yeah. Is that as in ballroom dancing or just?
I do.
Jiggling around the kitchen.
Jiggling around the kitchen. I do. Well, gosh, to say ballroom dancing makes it sound far too grand. My father and my mother used to do a bit of ballroom dancing, and they can do the classics, the foxtrot, the sort of waltz and everything. So I danced with my father doing the proper classic dances that you do in ballroom dancing, but any sort of dancing. I used to tap dance when I was 5, and I can't tap dance now, but I pretend. I pretend. I love movement, so I love moving.
Actually, you can see that in some of your pictures. There's that beautiful picture of you leaping. You're in front of a house, and it's all symmetrical, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, that looks like a proper ballet jump.
Yes.
To the untrained eye.
That was, oh my God. Do you know, a lot of the leaping and dancing is because I have arthritis. So, and I can feel myself seizing up over the years. It gets worse and worse year on year. And something has clicked in me, the bones, but something has clicked in me that I think I spent so much time hiding and just not surviving, because that makes it sound far too dramatic, but not living life to the full, that now the jumping and the leaping is because I can see a time when I might not be able to do that. And I'm doing it, I'm getting it all out now. I'm doing it all now. And this is why I'm slightly less, I'm a bit fearless now. I don't care as much anymore, because I know there'll come a time when I can't do what I'm doing. And so I'm getting it all out now, because I do think that my 40s were my lost decade. You know, I now look back and you realise how young you are in your 40s. Yeah. But it takes not being in them anymore to realise and go, what was I thinking wasting that, that time? So I'm determined that my 50s and beyond are going to be lived to the full, for sure.
Well, we are enjoying your 50s.
I have no shame.
Huge inspiration, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, thank you very much. It's just I just think life is for having a bit of fun and I do not take myself seriously at all. That's the worst criticism I could ever have, is if anyone thought that I was taking myself too seriously. I'm having a laugh, and I'm having a really, I'm having fun, and I'm trying to make other people laugh. That's a great source of joy for me. I want other people to laugh and to enjoy it. But yes, I'm having great fun, and it's nice to be having fun as me, as opposed to trying to be something else. I mean, mind you, I say that I get into character a lot, so that isn't me. But I do enjoy the characters. My amateur dramatics, it's stopped me having to find an amateur dramatic society area. I just do my Instagram and become somebody else. It's just lots of fun.
Oh, we can't thank you enough for joining us today.
No, thank you.
Oh, it's been lovely. It's been a pleasure. It's just been lovely to chat.
Oh,
it's only when you realise that you're chatting to people beyond the dog or the children or the husband, you realise how, my goodness, I miss this so much. I want to speak about other things, rather than what's for supper.
And it has given you an hour of digging your new cutting beds.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Do you know, I haven't sewn things properly. I am a happy amateur, and you know this, Bridget. I'm sort of and it's quite scary actually, because when you show things online, people come to you as an expert, and I'm forever going, I know nothing. I'm enjoying finding out myself. I hope that one day, when I'm in my 80s, I will be a really good gardener. But I'm not a good gardener now. I'm just an enthusiastic gardener, and I enjoy trying, and I enjoy trying, and then I fail, and then I try something else, and I'm learning along the way. But it's but once again, but once again, it's all underneath the heading of fun. But it does make me laugh sometimes when I'm sort of heralded as a lady gardener. Of I think, my goodness, if they knew me, I have, and also the baker as well. Everything I do is perfectly imperfect. It's sort of like perfectly purely because I enjoy it, imperfect because it's all imperfect.
Because that's real life.
That's real.
Yeah, it's real life.
Absolutely.
It's never meant to look perfect. That's the fun of it. So
I love that. Long may it continue, Paula.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I am really looking forward to seeing you at some point when we're allowed.
I know, absolutely. Well, it's coming.
Yes.
Hopefully.
Yeah, very soon. We will let you get back to whatever you need to do. But thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you all. Thank you for asking me. Lovely to see you.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye. Bye.
You've been listening to the Restless Creatives podcast. To ensure you don't miss our next episode, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, the Restless Creatives podcast. If you'd prefer to listen rather than watch us, you can catch us on one of your favoured podcast providers. For more sneak peeks and behind-the-scenes fun, visit our Instagram at the.restlesscreatives or visit our website, therestlesscreatives.co.uk.